Nervous laughter. As you've heard, we've all are coming from different experiences, and just as a way of getting to know where we're coming from, I have never been an editor, but I've been a critique partner and in critique groups, in 3 total altogether, in varying sizes. Sometimes people would come and go. And also, I've worked professionally with about at least 6 different editors that were both either assigned to me or I hired freelance when I started self-publishing. And mine are all for fiction. So if you wanted to say, like, how do you fit into the critiquing or editing?
Yeah, absolutely. So Joy Regulatory is my critique partner, and so we wrote the book that we couldn't find whenever we first started writing and wanted to be critique partners. And so we were critique partners for about 4 years before we felt like we really could say things with confidence about it. And so this is a practical approach to find and keep your writing critique partners. We talk about who you need to be before you can even start searching, how to choose a critique partner, how to receive a critique, how to give a critique, and all of those things are in here. But before then, I also was an adjunct professor for a university in English 101, 102, remedial English, and introduction to mythology as well. And so giving critiques with your students who have turned in these essays, you don't want to like smush their spirits because they are going to change the world, right? And so that is one way that I was able to hone kind of how to give a critique, at least in a way that I felt was really beneficial to the students. And Joy also seems to be doing pretty well. But that's a basic background in partnerships and critiques.
I guess mine, I actually hadn't thought about teaching. I did teach acting for a number of years, and from that you have to be, not soul-crushing with your critiques, but also, like, I don't want to say just constructive, but actionable. So whenever I would give critiques to, I also took a lot of screenwriting writing workshops back in the day. So, either as a teacher or as a colleague, is the feedback I am giving something that can do something with, versus like what Joey was talking about, oh, this is awful, what are you doing here? Versus something more tangible, like I don't understand what's going on at this part, or this character just kind of shows up, I'm not sure who they're supposed to be, things that they can look at like, oh, I need to do this, or this. So it's not necessarily trying to write the book for them or be the actor for them, but to give them a feedback that they can use. And then, like Joe said, acting, you learn how to give actionable feedback, but also take lots of it over the years.
I started off as a freelance reporter years ago, and I also started off very young writing fiction, and have worked now as a reporter for quite a long time. I'm a journalist now, but I'm about to retire. So I have visited all these different worlds. I was also an adjunct professor and had to figure out how to teach my students without crushing their spirits. Same thing. So I think the very difficult thing about being edited is discerning the value of the criticism that you're receiving. In my writing life, it's been all about the context. If you're writing for a publication that has certain reporting standards, you need a certain focus, a certain style, length, whatever, there's no mystery about that. You have to fulfill, that's your responsibility. You have to fulfill those obligations and do whatever it is that's needed to be done. It's trickier if you're writing creatively. Learning your craft is an ongoing mission, really never stops, right? And one of the things, just as Jody was saying earlier, is learning your own style, learning to trust your voice, learning what works and what doesn't, and that takes time, it takes practice. You just learn that, and you learn by doing, really, and also by listening to people who you learn to trust. My philosophy is always don't get butthurt. Just take what seems useful, get rid of what's not. Eventually, you will be able to trust your instincts, but if you're new to writing, you have to realize there's a lot to take on board. There's just a lot to learn. So, yeah. Thinking about critiques, when you're talking about critique partners, that sort of thing, that's more of a private one-on-one or a small group setting. But then if you think about edits, then if your work is accepted by a magazine or a publishing company, you will be assigned an editor. You have no choice in it, and so you're working with usually a virtual stranger, because most of it's done, unless it's something local. And you're working over the computer, you never meet person in person. See if I need an editor for my speech. So you do one-on-one or personal critiques, then professional edits, and then the other thing you run into is once you are published is those reviews that people will post usually online. And I lean forward. And so then you can get critique feedback via a public review for your work, which I don't know. What do y'all think is the scariest one to deal with?
So my scariest experience is actually as a student in a classroom. So whenever I have a piece that is very special to me, and I've tried to do something with it, something maybe outside of my box, or something that's maybe something I've explored that's new, and this has happened. It's happened. So you're in the creative writing class and you read your short story aloud, and sometimes you know the people, sometimes you don't. This was a night class, and so I didn't know most of the people that was in there. But it was terrifying because they didn't get what I was trying to do, and it was like, could you please use more complex sentences? Like, because I was trying to write like a modern day fairy tale that was also like a political allegory. It went poorly, guys. But in those group settings, whenever you don't have a personal relationship, so probably the editor, when I wouldn't know if I was assigned somebody who I didn't know, didn't have a relationship with, who didn't know me, didn't know my craft, didn't know that I am like 3 empathy for the Clifton strengths, and like, that I feel all the emotions like twice. That's something that would terrify me.
I guess it was more early on. Now I'm more excited about getting critiques because it means I'm going in the right direction and I'm in a place where I'm getting close to publishing something or having something used. But earlier on, I think a lot of new authors deal with this. We get very defensive over our work. It's like, oh no, you can't change this. It's my special story. Like I can't change anything about this. And there's this term at least in screenwriting. And if you were here earlier, you're going to say it already killed your darlings. So don't get married to the first thing you put on the page. Think of like the first draft almost as like practicing the piano. You're not trying to save every single note that you blank down. You're not trying to save and record your first few sessions that you're practicing. You want to get through that, get through the clunky dialogue and the terrible story arcs and the scenes that lead nowhere. Write those, experience those, and then that you learn by doing, and you get better by having those moments.
Exactly. And to just to refer back to what you were talking about, how you realize that other people aren't getting what you intended, maybe you aren't clear. Well, you may not want to hear that, right? You may be like very defensive about that, but you're learning from your audience, from your readers, that it didn't work, that you need to do more, you need to be more clear, you need to rewrite this section or that section. You can't take it personally. You have to take it on board and say, okay, what is it that I want to create in my, what response I want from my reader, right? So how do I work this? How do I take what they're telling me and think about it and apply it to what I'm doing?
Right, and so in that situation, that was Baby May, who was sitting in a creative writing class for like one of the first times ever, right? And so there was not a teacher, May, who came in as an adjunct teacher who had like in-class workshops and things like that. I was able to tailor the workshops in order to be respectful of, well, not that that wasn't respectful, it's a different way of teaching. So what I was able to do in order to maybe have my students not feel the same way that I felt in that instance was to give them an opportunity to say, So this is me. This is my third draft of this. I'm trying to make a modern day fairy tale that has political symbolism and allegory in it. Can you please tell me where I might fail with that? And then read the short story out loud. So that there is purpose, there's motivation, there's intention, and even if you know the theme and stuff of your piece, if you're able to give that to whoever is critiquing your work, then when they're reading it, they can read it through those lenses with specific questions and specific points that they're trying to find. And in that way, they can give you really good critical analysis. And that is going to benefit you because those are the things that you're trying to figure out. Like if you're trying to figure out pacing and you let the person who's reviewing your work know that you're having an issue with pacing, can you please mark where you felt like it was too slow or too fast and that sort of thing, then you're able to work on that instance. There's things that you know that you can identify, and then they can also share with you some other things that they are noticing in your piece as well. But they don't overlook the thing that you're looking for too. And it's a safe place. We've then created a safe place as well, instead of overwhelming someone else with the entire piece and saying, okay, tell me what you think. So Joy and I, we critique each other's novels. We prefer to have an entire novel. And if she were to give that to me without specific things for me to look to, it would be so daunting for me as a critique partner that I love her so much, and I respect what she writes so much that I would want to put red everywhere where I felt like I was going to be able to help her reach her vision. And then I would probably give it back to her, and she would be like, there's red everywhere, which is then daunting for somebody who's receiving a critique. And then you have to separate the emotions, because these things are really, art is powerful and art is very personal. So when you get a critique, it's going to sting, whether, no matter what it is, it's going to sting. And so you got to emotionally prepare for that. You got to recognize that you have chosen somebody to give your piece to sometimes. You've chosen somebody to give your piece to that loves and respects you and respects the way that you write, and they're going to help you get to that vision.
It's something I hadn't thought of in quite that terms before, but gauging the skill level of the people that you're working with in critiques, because when you're new at it, one, it wounds you a lot more raw, so you got to be a little more careful, but also there's a lot of shorthand that you start developing when you work with somebody, somebody's been in business for a while, but when you start spitting off theme and premise and what's your antagonist's arc, whereas you're not going to dive deep into that with a brand new writer. You'll slowly coax them through that, but you realize that one, they've got a thicker skin when they've been at it for a little while longer, and that's why when I taught acting, some of my acting students, they want to do it immediately in the advanced class, and it's like, okay, not being in the advanced class is not a strike against you. It's not saying you're not good enough. It's just saying you need to develop the skill set first, and then get ready for more specific critiques. And as writers, I think it's the same thing. Whereas younger writers, newer writers, they're still learning a lot of shorthand, they're still learning a lot of jargon that we just kind of add around like nothing, because we're used to it, and we can take those notes a lot differently as we're going through that process.
I'd like to hear how, I'm sorry, I'm not from the journalism world, so I'd love to hear how it works in your world.
I was just thinking about that. All right, so presenting in the trade, I write for trade publications. We cover shipping. It's very specific. It's very focused. It's a very particular audience. We do the classic top-down structure for stories. I mean, it's just there's a certain way things have to be done. So when I started, I had been a freelance reporter for years, and then I started working for the Journal of Commerce, but I was not a trained journalist. I had a lot to learn. And my editors are quite exacting, right? They want certain things a certain way. So for example, just thinking about this morning, one time I was writing a story about some big energy project that was being built in Australia, and the cargo that was being moved there was my responsibility, right? To write about these big things that were moving back and forth across the world. I started writing the story, and it turns out this energy company had sort of blindly gone out, they were building a new project, and they blew up a cave that contained indigenous art. It was 42,000 years old. They blew it up in this casual way, and they were like, oh, you know, my bad, and they paid fine, and they went about their business, and that was the end of that, right? It was just not. So I went down this huge rabbit hole of research, right? I'm like, preserving art, indigenous art, blah, 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 blah. And I included a lot of that in a story that I was writing for the JOC, and my editor said to me, Janet, this is all very interesting, but it is not what our audience needs from you here, right? It's not relevant. So his name is Kevin, he still is my editor at times, Kevin Seville. He implied that we could have all learned to call a Seville chop to my story. I had probably 1,600 words, bam, it was 700 words, all focused on the things that we needed to relate to our audience. Nothing to do with the indigenous, or very little. I had maybe 3 lines that I lost indigenous art, that was it. So, and he was right. That was what we needed to give to our audience in that context, right? That was my job. That was his job. That's what we needed to do. So I think you have to, when you're writing and when you're working, you have to think about who you're writing for. What is your purpose? You can always, anything that you do, if you're a reporter, one of the best thing about being a reporter is like the whole world is your job. And everything is interesting. If you're a curious person like me, you can talk to everybody. You can say, tell me your story. And everything gets used eventually. And so the research that I did for this story that didn't go into the news story is still, it's still on my computer. It's still on my laptop. I still think about it. I probably will use it in some context someday. Stuff is lost. But you have to think about directing your energy and your time in a way that's useful and practical for what you're trying to accomplish. So, yeah, I don't know. Lesson learned. That was a learning experience for me, for sure.
When several of you mentioned learning to sort out what you keep versus what you ignore when you receive critiques, and I even include reviews, like public reviews. But what do you focus on? Are you looking at the person, just the topics, or are you looking also at the source where it's coming from?
That's a really great question. So before I hand over a critique, I also do like a self-edit. And so when I do the self-edit, I get to a place where I can't go any further. That's when I hand it off to a critique partner or actually someone I trusted to do the critique. And so I also trust them to know the aspects of my genre that need to be present, that they know the level, like the craft level, that we're on the same, at least at the same par, not just like, have this. We don't necessarily have the same strengths and weaknesses. We complement each other very well. So where I'm strong, she might be a little bit more and have challenges there, and vice versa. So, and then I'm also really clear, like I'm having, this is my theme, this is what I'm trying to go for, and get some questions. But when it's time to get rid of it, if it doesn't aid the purpose of the piece, if it doesn't fit the genre, and if it doesn't have any movement toward the character arc or a necessary plot point, and then also if it's characters, if I have too many characters,